we can get quite a bit of information about the operation of a Cisco Catalyst switch if we have physical access to that switch. And we get that information in the form of LEDs. And we should be aware that the function and the meaning of these LEDs might vary as we're going from one Cisco Catalyst switch model to another. Here we have a Cisco Catalyst 3750 series switch, and in the lower left-hand corner we have a mode button. And by pressing the mode button, we're toggling between various options. For example, right now we're on status, stat. If I press the mode button again, we go to duplex, and I could go to speed or I could go to stack. And we toggle through those different options. Now, what does that mean? If I'm on stat or status, that means that I can look above the ports, the LEDs above the ports on the switch, and get status information about their current operational state. For example, we can see on the port labeled 1 on this switch that it's green most of the time, and it's blinking. A blinking green light is telling us that the link is good. In other words, we have link integrity, as it's called. And the blinking shows that there is traffic present on that port. As one other example, let's go down to duplex. If I press the mode button and go to duplex, and we take another look at our port, we can see that now it's steady. It's a steady green. This does not mean that there's no traffic on the port. It's just that now the LED is giving us information about the duplex. And because it's green, that tells us that we're running in full duplex operation. And to illustrate this a bit further, I've got a laptop plugged into that port, and I'm going to tell the laptop to run in a half duplex mode. And when I do that, the light goes out. Not because we're not connected, it's just that we've told the mode of the switch, the mode of the LEDs above the ports, to reflect duplex information as opposed to status information. And you may have noticed that the light just came back on. That's not because we went back to full duplex, but that's because after a timeout period, the switch is going to return to reflecting status information instead of duplex or any other kind of information above the switch ports. Now, this discussion thus far has been about a specific model of Cisco Catalyst switch, the Cisco Catalyst 3750 series of switch. However, for the Cisco CCNA exam for your studies, I want you to know the LED options for a Cisco Catalyst 2960 series switch. Let's take a look at a table and see what the different LEDs mean on a 2960.
As a reference and for your study, this table is giving us a description for various LED indicators for a Cisco Catalyst 2960 series of switch. Some of these are going to be really similar, if not identical, to what we saw in the Cisco Catalyst 3750 a moment ago. For example, the system LED. That's indicating the overall status of the system, of the switch. If it's off, then that means that the switch is not powered up at the moment. An amber light, an amber LED for the system LED, says that a system malfunction has occurred. When a switch powers up, it does several internal self-checks. That's called the POST, the power on self-test. And something went wrong if it's amber. If it's amber, that means that there is a system malfunction. We need to investigate that. Green, that's what we're hoping for. Green means that the switch has booted successfully. Some switches can support a redundant power supply, a power supply that can take over if the primary power supply fails. If the RPS is off, if that light, the LED is off, then that means maybe that the switch doesn't even have an RPS installed, or maybe it's installed but it's not been powered up. If the RPS light is amber, that means that an RPS, it is installed but it's not currently operational. If it's flashing amber, that means the RPS is doing its job. The switch's primary power supply, for whatever reason, it has failed. Good news, though, we had a redundant power supply, and that redundant power supply is now powering the switch. Green means that an RPS is installed and it is operational. If it's green but flashing green, then that means that, yes, there is a redundant power supply installed, but it's currently powering another device. It's not able to power this switch. The port status indicator, we saw that on the 3750, and we have one of those for each port on the switch. If it's off, that means that there's no link present on the port, no link integrity as it's called. And amber light means that the port is somehow disabled. Maybe there was a security violation. We had port security configured where, let's say, a certain number of MAC addresses were able to be learned off of a port, and if more addresses than that showed up on a port, we disable the port. Maybe we've got some sort of a spanning tree protocol issue where we have a layer 2 topological loop that caused the port to become disabled. Maybe we administratively disable it, but for some reason, that port is disabled if the port status light is amber. If it's solid green, that means we have link integrity. There's something plugged into that port, a link is present, but there's no activity. We know there's no activity because it's a solid green LED. If it were a flashing green LED, that means that not only a link is present, but also traffic is being seen on that port. Now, if it's going back and forth between green and amber, that indicates errors that have been seen on that port. Maybe we have an excessive number of collisions or cyclical redundancy checks, CRC errors, or alignment errors. The bandwidth utilization is interesting. This allows us to look at essentially a bar graph of bandwidth utilization on the switch. If you think about those lights, those LEDs above the switch ports, if you think of them looking left to right, if we have a series of amber lights turned on, if we just imagined those lights as interconnecting, as forming a line, it kind of makes a bar, like a bar graph, like a histogram. And how far over the amber row of lights goes, that indicates the maximum backplane utilization on the switch since the switch has been powered on. Probably a fewer number of green lights will be on as compared to the number of amber lights, because the green lights, again starting at the left going to the right, imagining those green lights interconnected forming a bar in our histogram, that's showing us the current backplane utilization. We could also see the duplex. We demonstrated this for you on the 3750 a few moments ago. If we push the mode button and we select duplex, if the light is off, that doesn't mean that we have nothing plugged into that port. It simply means that we're running in half duplex mode. If it's green, that means we're running in full duplex mode. Again, the moral of the story is we can glean a lot of very valuable information from looking at LEDs on our Cisco Catalyst switches. However, the specific information and the way we get at that specific information, it can vary widely depending on our switch models, so check your documentation.